My name is Jensen Morris, born in Delaware, spent some time in Maryland, got the hell out of Baltimore to Tampa, living the good life now, to say the least. I think anyone that knows me personally knows that I'm in a happy place now. Growing up, I did a bunch of different sports in the very beginning, like most athletic kids or kids that their parents make do sports, right? So when I was very little, I actually figure skated, believe it or not. So that's like a fun fact. Then broke my leg, and I was like, no, you know what? I don't think this is for me. Got into swimming, soccer, and baseball. I was good at baseball, didn't really like it. I liked soccer, but I sucked at it. And then I didn't really like swimming that much, but I was like by far best at that. So stuck with that. Swam for a very short stint, D1 for Towson University back in Maryland. Coaching scandal happened, kind of hopped out of there. I already knew in the back of my mind, ever since I picked up a weight when I was literally 12 years old with my friend Cruz. That's his first name, Cruz, believe it or not. Ever since the first time I lifted, I was like, yep, this is something I want to do forever. And I've never had that feeling with, anything else except for, when I saw my girlfriend, I was like, oh, you forever. Yeah, got it, of course. But those are the only two things. Did a little bit of bodybuilding training as much as I could while I was swimming. But I mean, when you're trying to get to the D1 level and then, transition to D1, like you can't really do too much bodybuilding, right? You're gonna be too sore, too much energy expenditure for sure. But I guess I got into it right as I finished swimming. And then since swimming is my whole identity, kind of lost it for a bit. And then kind of got back into lifting with powerlifting. Got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that kind of shuts that out a little bit. Basically, my spine can get incredibly inflamed to the point of not being able to sleep, for a good summary, and just like constant pain. So I was like, all right, won't do that. So now I just recently transitioned back to bodybuilding training. And then after doing that for a bit and, finding some success in that, I decided to go full time with my coaching after doing a sales job for a bit so I could just save up before because, you can't you got to have some clients before, but it's tough to go full time if you don't have kind of like a main gig
Right.
before. I don't think most people are blessed enough to just go 0 to 100 with coaching, but you learn some lessons before you go full time. So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I think that's where a lot of people in bodybuilding and the industry itself are in terms of like, even if they're not to that top level, Olympia stage level, they can still figure out a way to make some money at what they love, what they're passionate about, what they know some stuff about, which I think is really cool and unique in terms of like sports in general. But it's
Mm-hmm.
also a spot where you have to devote so much time to doing the thing, bodybuilding, and then you're devoting so much time to like your quote side hustle, if you will, for usually a decent amount of time. And you have this other job and you have, just life in general. So there's so much going on there. I mean, it's crazy to think, but getting kind of into, I want to, touch on something that you said when you first got into bodybuilding from powerlifting. Was there any like hesitancy there? Was there any like, let me see what my body is capable of? How did you go about like actually figuring out a little bit about like what your kind of like limitations were to a certain degree?
So I knew physically my limitations were going to be I can't go very close to failure on hip hinge motions. Basically, the risk to reward ratio just isn't there. I think even if you don't have ankylosing spondylitis, that's the autoimmune disease I have, or you can say AS for short. Even if you don't have that, I mean, probably not a good idea. But that was the most noticeable limitation. I was like, okay, I probably shouldn't, do basically I can't do conventional deadlifts very heavy anymore. I hate to say like I can't because like you can kind of always find a way to fit stuff in to some degree, but that was one limiting factor. And I kind of just I had to shift my frame. It was more of a mental thing. I had to shift my um, mindset around training from having a chip on my shoulder, being about how much weight I could do, how many reps I could do, to more so having a chip on my shoulder about training intelligently and seeing how much pain I could put myself through in a productive way for a set. So, you still need to progress the logbook, but you need to do that while you're having, as much intent on the muscle that you're aiming to bias with that exercise as possible, keep the tempo somewhat in a consistent range so you can actually track accurately. It's a lot more I don't want to say it's a more scientific thing, but there's almost more you can control with bodybuilding, which is fantastic for me because I'm a bit of a control freak. Makes sense why I'm a coach, right? But I also became so overwhelmed with it to a point where I had to pull back a little bit. Like I just put a post up today. I was like, basically everyone says this, but it is just a good mindset. Control what you can. Try not to stress about what you can't. And it took me a little bit of adjusting for that with bodybuilding because it's, it's if you're not hitting certain metrics, you're just really not progressing. But it's not always about the scale moving up super consistently. It's not always about the scale moving down super consistently. Whereas with powerlifting, it's like, you're either getting stronger or you're not. Like it's incredibly cut and dry. But bodybuilding, like with my check-in process, I use the same thing with myself. Very long biofeedback list. So we're looking at digestion, we're looking at sleep, we're looking at heart rate variability. We're looking at energy, mood, if your lifts are progressing or not, how your pumps are. I think that's a very underutilized biofeedback tool. And then all of that in conjunction with pictures, in conjunction with a scale. Whereas powerlifting, it's more just like, did you hit the weight you were supposed to or not?
Yeah, for sure.
That was the biggest shift, I would say.
It seemed to me that there was almost like a shift or maybe even several shifts in this time frame of the last maybe 4 or 5 years of like the role that deadlifting plays in exercise and in bodybuilding. Do we need it? And, strength conditioning, do we need it? Is it just a powerlifting tool? Like it's so interesting to me how it's kind of shifted the perspective over the last several years.
Yeah, I'll share my opinion on that because I kind of tend to fall in the middle with everything. I kind of see both extremes and just end up always falling in the middle. So when people say you shouldn't deadlift, obviously that's incredibly idiotic. Let me know if I start to use too strong language here, but it's very stupid. You should know how to pick something heavy up off the ground. When people are like, "Oh, I only do functional training. I don't do deadlifts." I heard someone say that once, and I was just like, dude, it's picking something off the effing ground. How do you get more functional than that? Squatting is going from standing to, basically sitting or beneath it. It's a basic squatting movement. Before we had toilets, what we had to do to shit. Doesn't get more functional than that. Bench press, yeah, maybe not. I mean, overhead press is probably more of a functional movement that you would use more in life. There's very few times where you're completely flat on your back or on your back with a crazy arch and doing that. But yeah, with deadlifts, I think for bodybuilding, they're not necessarily vital for every person. I use deadlift variations. So if someone needs to bring up their hamstrings, I'll have them do an RDL in a way that biases their hamstrings and low back a little bit more. If I need to bring glutes up, I'll do a very specific variation. I'm like very intensive with being super nitpicky with that because until you kind of get it and feel it with that, it can just be a little tough. But I'll use conventional deadlifts for people who I think really need to bring up their erectors in general, and not just the low back erectors, like the whole thing. Because even though it's mostly an isometric contraction, I do think it's such an intense contraction, and that those muscles are meant to play such a role in stabilization that it does kind of have a unique benefit, and that some people need that. I think once you've done them for enough years, and if you're, somewhat genetically gifted in the erector department, the trap department, some people will say the low lats are really good with conventional deadlifts, and you don't have to have them in there. There's always another way to work those things, and I think most things are worked better through going through a very full range of motion with nice control, emphasizing the stretch, especially if you're training the muscle through a movement where it's emphasizing the length and position. Really, holding the peak contraction if you're doing like some lat pull down where you're emphasizing like the short range of motion, something like that. And for traps, I mean, we plenty of exercises for that. But it's I remember it was on the Joe Rogan podcast. One of the strong men, I forget which, it was the strong but pretty guy said it. He's like, yeah, deadlifts are horrible. Deadlifts are horrible for your back. Like the average person shouldn't do them. And I was like, please provide more context. I was like, yes, obviously you shouldn't do it with a cat back. Like getting as much weight up as you can, no matter what. But like, you should learn how to pick something heavy off the ground. So that's kind of my take on that.
There has to be, I think, a standard. What it's kind of like in elementary school or whatever when we're doing the fitness test, and it's like, what can you run the mile in? How many sit-ups can you do? It's along those same lines. But people, kind of shy away from that because it's the weights. It's, oh, I don't want to, dedicate that much time to learning how to do the movement and then, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera.
So I was informed that apparently they actually got rid of the presidential fitness testing.
Wow.
So you're talking about people shying away from the deadlifts because it's weights and stuff. Well, society has just gotten so soft that we've now phased away from any type of accountability
That's
with
insane.
health from a young age. And I won't go down that tangent, but I figured you might be interested to hear that because it just plays your point brilliantly.
Man, that's sad. I mean, I remember the day that we had to do that in gym. It sucked because then you couldn't like do something fun, and you had to wait for the last person to get done doing their laps. And it was like, can
I
you,
was that guy. I was that try hard. See what I mean?
it's like, can you speed this up? It shouldn't take you the whole gym period to walk 20 laps around the gym. And they're doing it on purpose because they don't also want to like do basketball or like volleyball or something. They'd rather just
I was
walk.
talking about a kid that would go slow, so it took forever. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was the dude that on the pacer test would do it until I was like coughing up blood. I was like, I have to break the record that no one besides me cares about.
Right,
But
right.
that's hilarious.
That's awesome. It's a lack of respect for our physical body. Like it doesn't matter. We have no need for this anymore. We don't need to work, laborious jobs. And then you also have that like now we have chat GPT, we have, blah, 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 DoorDash. We have all these conveniences to where the physical body almost is becoming like. If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.
It's like moving towards the degree of like people seeing someone who takes excellent care of their body or pursues bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is not, health, but someone who's in shape or does bodybuilding. I think like a lot of people tend to see it as vain if they're insecure in their habits and they know like deep down, oh, I would be better off if I actually, spend some of that time that I now have from all the inconveniences of the chat GPT, the DoorDash, everything else that makes life very easy in 2023 for people that are, blessed like us to live in the US and so on and so forth, or privileged. They just took some of that time and put it into those, habits to keep their body on the up and up. I think deep down they know it would be better. So I think they're more and more frantically scrambling for a justification or a culture or community that justifies their shitty habits.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly.
Yeah, it's almost like you're seen as like a radical person if you take care of yourself. It's like, oh, this person must only care about themselves, or they must, be, like you said, vain, or they must look at me because I'm not that person and think negatively about me. Like I think there's so much negativity around taking care of yourself, and it's such a weird conundrum.
Yeah, I agree. And I do feel bad too. And that's kind of why, like, when I'm in public, I'll cover up a bit. Like I'm right now, got my belts popping out or whatever. But when I'm going to the grocery store and stuff, like I'll wear oversized tees and stuff like that because I don't want the attention. But the one specific thing you said where people that are out of shape sometimes will assume that someone that is well above the average of in shape or just extra muscular, extra lean, whatever, is judging them. And it's just like, nah, bro, just like live and let live. Like, I mean, yeah, like sometimes I'll stare at someone for 2 seconds if it's crazy. Some people will stare at me for 2 seconds if it's crazy, but it's not like, I'm not just walking around like, oh my God, all these fat people. No, the only time I think anything close to that is when someone is putting something on social media that, like I said, is supporting that lack of self-accountability culture, or they're just saying something blatantly false. And I'm like, okay, you should probably actually live this and maybe dive into studies a little bit before you're putting this out there because it's doing more harm than good. Like some of these people think they're doing good and they're not. And like, I think a bit of gatekeeping is good. But on top of that, it's like, we should all just be striving to always learn more, and we should just stay on the end of listening more rather than talking more until you're to a very high threshold. Like you don't want to take it to the account where you have imposter syndrome, but I think that's a big part of like the cultural issue, the social media issue that's making it even worse is just lots of misinformation. So it's harder for people to actually get in shape lots of hate from both sides. Like one person says one thing, and the other side will just take that and be like, "Oh, that's what everyone on the other side thinks." Like, no, it's just an extreme example, and I mean, it's the same thing with politics too. But it's like I've come to recognize most people that are not that out of shape, like actually believe the craziest things that you'll see on social media. They just are really freaking confused because of all the shit on social media.
Yeah. And then taking it and almost disguising it as self-care, like all this, all the stuff that you're talking about, disguising it as, well, you have to take care of yourself. You have to have time for yourself, your mental health. Like, if you have better habits and healthier habits, your mental health is going to be better anyway. So it's like going back to what you said, it's so crazy. It's so confusing. And then it does somehow like everything else, I guess, these days, it gets wrapped up into like your political beliefs. Like, oh, you must be this because you have this thoughts about, the world and people. It's like, no,
Right.
this is something that I think is important. It doesn't,
Right.
I don't know. It's just so crazy.
Yeah. I agree.
When you got diagnosed with AS, you said, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that abbreviated sometimes, but don't quote me on that being an official abbreviation. But yeah, ankylosing spondylitis. Yeah.
So when you got diagnosed with that, was there any time for you where it took, it was challenging just mentally to almost be like, well, what do I do? Or what did you just kind of jump right into the next thing?
Yeah, I haven't really talked about it much before. The only person that really saw me go through it too much was honestly my girlfriend, and we were still kind of new to dating at the time. So, he or she has this guy who's like screaming in the gym doing powerlifting, kind of has this like, persona, but I was just like maybe tastefully unhinged, just how I joke about it. Like I got really, really, really in the zone of powerlifting. Um, and not being able to have those super high highs from training did mess with my head quite a bit. And then the next stage was like, wow, I might never really be able to do that again. And, I can kind of get that feeling from training with bodybuilding, but it took me like a full year and a half for it to be anywhere near an equivalent thing. So, now I feel like I had like basically like not to get too nerdy, I feel like I had like a huge dopamine release from like hitting a deadlift PR, hitting a squat PR, and it's like dangerous, like it's exhilarating, like it puts you in this crazy fight or flight, just purely sympathetic driven animalistic state with just enough control there where you can channel it in the right way. Whereas with bodybuilding training, I feel like you have to channel it. You can't overthink it too much. But you got to channel it a little bit more. Like when you're powerlifting, you're just thinking like, all right, I got to do the movement right. But it's the same 3 movements that you practice over and over again. So it's pretty automatic. So you can kind of give into like that dark side a little bit more. Whereas with bodybuilding, the exercises you can do that with and it'd be safe and productive, and especially doing it consistently week after week is a lot fewer and further between. And then on top of this, also thought I was just never going to be able to do any type of deadlift variation for a while, because I initially thought I had a rib out of place because I was using a weird specialty squat bar where I was like really protracted for it. It's like it was a transformer bar from Kabuki, and I just had it in a weird setting. I wasn't used to it. It just went too heavy, because my upper back basically it got to the point where it would tighten up so bad that if I woke up from it in my sleep, I just wouldn't be able to go back to sleep. So some nights I would get 8 hours of sleep. Some nights I would get 2 hours and just painful tossing and turning the rest of the night. Sometimes I would like go grab resistance bands and like go through the motions with it, like try to put a foam roller to it. That did nothing. I would have needed like an 800-pound guy's elbow or something probably to loosen it up. So coping with that really wasn't that easy. And it was just everything I do, like I'm very into. So that goes for relationships, it goes for sports. It's always been like that. It's something that I don't even try to fight anymore. I just embrace it and try to use it, for my strengths, and just keep in mind how my brain works. I just accept it instead of trying to change it at this point, because I think it can be a gift used the right way. But so I was like, I identify as a powerlifter. Like I coach powerlifters. Like I do these movements. I like get the stupid Instagram clout from posting the PRs with some crazy metal music behind it. And I had to just like redefine myself. And I didn't really care about redefining myself or anyone else. I was just like, dude, you gotta like kind of find yourself again. Like, and I knew it wasn't just like, oh, that stage of my life is over. I was like, no, I live for ultimate pursuits of passion. Like I have to find something that I love as much. And I was like, yeah, my frame may not be like perfectly built for bodybuilding. So I'm kind of like, I'm kind of fridge like even when I swam and was like, even when I had like veins in my abs, like I'm kind of like built straight. So I was like, I know I have to get my lats and delts huge in order to actually have a nice V taper. Like I have some strengths and weaknesses with it, but I always put on muscle easier than I gain strength. I just like the performance aspects of strength more. So I just hyper focused on that. I was like, dude, you have a gift, you have your health, use it, and then eventually find some way to help other people do what they want to do too. And I just kind of like repeated those things to myself every single day until the back eventually got better. And then when I did, I just like looked back and I was like, wow, I can't believe I made it through that without having a little bit more of a mental breakdown, to be honest.
Yeah,
So
for sure. I mean, and being able to pivot like that is so lucky, and knowing like, oh, this is something else that I can do, that I have access to, that my body's going to allow me to do. Are you looking for a supplement company that can help take your fitness game to the next level? Look no further than All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Their cutting-edge supplements are scientifically formulated to give you the edge you need in the gym and in life. Whether you're looking to build muscle, increase endurance, or boost recovery time, All Sport Pharmaceuticals has you covered. And with a wide range of products designed for people of all levels, you're sure to find the perfect supplement for your needs. So why wait? Give your body the support it deserves with All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Visit their website today to learn more and start achieving your fitness goals.
my threshold for like how deep I dive into stuff, if I'm interested in it, is just weird. It is. It's just weird. Like I can't, if I'm like, it'll be random stuff. Like I was looking at like World War II history and I hadn't studied that since like high school. And then the next thing you know, like 3 hours later, I was like, I just watched an hour on the geopolitical part of it. I just watched an hour on the heroes and villains of it, and then like an hour of it putting it together. I was like, why would I need to know this? I don't know. But I'm not like, I'd rather just know it to know it. Like, why would I half ass it, I guess? So yeah, I can fully relate.
I don't think it's perfectionism for me, but I think it's more of like this need to, like I said, just like go all into anything. So I think that's so true with bodybuilding. You know, bodybuilders in general, though, is because that's what like a lot of what bodybuilding is like you're going all into this life because it's a lifestyle, right? More than almost any other sport, it's almost all encompassing to your, just the little amount of time, you spend in the gym. And I say little, I mean, compared to a 24-hour day. But then you have the every meal, you have preparing those meals, going to the store, you have, your sleep and tracking all of your, like you were talking about before, your biomarkers and all of that stuff it's so much defines like what all in really is.
Yeah, and one thing I found too is because I am so all in when I got into bodybuilding, I was maybe chasing the scale a little bit too much, and I had to shift what I was obsessed with in order for it to be more productive. So, I shifted towards trying to perfect my habits. And then I started getting a little too obsessed with like some of the stuff. It doesn't matter a little bit. So I moved towards trying to automate a lot of my habits. So now I don't really have to think about my food. It's like I don't have meal prep containers because I work from home. So, but it's just grab it, weigh the steak out, put the rice in the thing. It's like the little pre-packed rice because I'm lazy and it's a lot wetter. It's a lot easier to eat. So just put that in the microwave, get the steak out, mix them together, have whatever fruit I'm supposed to have the meal good to go. Like if I used to do it like when I tracked the macros, doing all of that all the time, like it would make the nutrition aspect of it so much more encompassing, and it would, I think, drive me crazy if I still did that the way that I used to while trying to handle all my clients and everything. And I tell clients that I'm like, hey guys, like I know you want like food freedom, but for some people who are trying to take this at a really high level, at certain times, food freedom is actually just going to be eating the same thing every day or having an off day plan and an on day plan, because then you don't have to think about it. You're free from having to worry about food because you already know what you have to do and it's already ready. So there's a lot of individual psychology there, but that's one thing that I've kind of been a little more unabashedly able to promote is I'm just like, guys, meal plans are just going to make this a lot easier for a lot of you guys. I love macros. I still run at the macros with your meal plan, but like just keep it stupid simple. There's a reason everyone at a high level does this instead of counting how many, grams of honey grams they had because they wanted to hit their 120 grams of carbs pre lift.
I forget what the acronym is. I think there's an acronym out there for it.
IIFYM, if it fits your macros.
Right. And that just seems, like that's such a prevalent thing because it is more, how can I, and not necessarily, but I feel like it's a little bit of how can I scoot this maybe other food into, my otherwise plan. It's like, oh, I'm going to take this part out so I can put in maybe a cookie or whatever, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But it's like, let's kind of be clear on what's going on here.
Yeah, what I've kind of moved a little bit more towards is now I say meal plan with substitutions. So I write out the macros in addition to the meal plan for all my clients. So I'm like, hey, if you got to swap, like a lot of times people be like, oh, I got to go out to dinner with my parents. They live 6 hours away. They're driving over, whatever. I'm like, okay, yeah, enjoy that. Like, go to the restaurant. Let's just pre-plan a little bit. If they have nutrition facts, great. If not, I'll help you guesstimate. Or if they're already to there, they'll guess. But it's most of the newer people doing that for. So that way we can just align what they get at the restaurant with what the macros would have been for that dinner. Or if it's somewhere where it's just like nothing is healthy, it's a rare one in a year occasion. Maybe we'll like combine 2 meals into one. Or if it's like low protein and they're going crazy, like wedding or something, I'll be like, chug 2 scoops of protein before you go into the event. Try to get some more lean protein and veggies if you're there. Try to just have the carb sources that you're going, not be like super fatty. And it usually works out pretty well at this point. But when people don't have a meal plan at all and they're changing their food sourcing up constantly, I've just seen it. The food quality just tends to go down and down and down because they're consuming such highly palatable foods that I started to get a dopamine response from that. And so they just need more palatable foods, more foods. Like it just keeps getting worse and worse. And then, suddenly instead of having your oats and whey, you're having like, Pop Tarts, maybe Pop Tarts and whey or something like that, So
Right. Yeah.
For sure.
In being a coach, how do you kind of handle the individualized aspects of personalities of people's wants and needs and the human aspect of it? Even though this person has a goal, they still have the human aspect, the human error aspect in it as well. Like, how do you kind of manage that from a psychological perspective?
So I try to keep a few things in mind. One is, I always try to remember just with everything in life, reality is what it is. The world isn't what I want it to be. It's what it is. So there are certain people, and I don't tell them this, where I know they go slightly off plan because they'll occasionally admit it, or I also coach their significant other and their significant other rats them out. They'll send the check in first, mention it about the other partner, and then the other person sends it in. I'm like, you want to tell me about the piece that they told me about? But so I'll have their macros be like a little bit lower, especially if it's someone who gets like a weekly untracked meal. I'll keep the macros a little bit lower than they should be because I'm like, I know you're going to be a little loose with tracking. You're probably going to go above what you're supposed to for the untracked meal where we still guesstimate calories and protein a little bit. And that's something I started doing probably like 6 months ago. I was kind of like late to it. For the first 6 months, I was very naive and I honestly didn't think about the psychological aspect of it as much because to me, I'm just like, you tell me to do it, I'll do it pretty much. That's not how everyone works. If that was how everyone works, like very few of my lifestyle clients would probably need me. You know what I mean? So that's part of it. But then the other thing too with the personalities is one thing I've switched to is I used to do phone calls for the initial consultation, sales call, whatever you want to call it. Now I do a Zoom call because the nonverbal communication, I can also kind of like physically see where they're at a little bit. When I nail on like pain points, like it kind of reiterating why they came to me, what they don't have working well that I can fix, and explaining a lot of the physiological mechanisms behind things from the get-go. When they tell me the issues on the call, you can see what they're uncomfortable with. You can see what they're ready to face head on. And I'll just ask. Like I've learned half of coaching is just drawing out more information than people are initially willing to give you. Like you got to dig deep, you got to get a little bit personal sometimes. And the other thing too is with the check-ins that I set up, I was blessed to have like 2 really awesome coaches before I started self-coaching again. And, I stole shit from their check-ins. Like nothing's original, like they got it from their previous coach, their mentor and everything. And so, now I'm a little more like I'll track blood glucose levels a little bit more. But one thing I added in, which is funny thing, is like the Bristol stool chart. I added that into the digestion part of it. So I'm just like, all right, tell me what your poop's been like, basically. Just make it where they're just telling me a number so that I can just, okay, cool, you're at a 4, little soft, but you're good. All right, you're at a 1, that's an issue, stuff like that. But I do have I have a section at the bottom where it's like list any examples of non-adherence. And I'll maybe have like, in the beginning, I would have like 50% of people put like nothing, or they just be like, yep, perfect, coach. And after a few weeks, I'm just like, there's no chance there wasn't anything. There's no chance that you didn't fall short on steps the one day, or that your sleep was crappy the one day. Like, I know your schedule. Like, you told me you went to EDC this weekend. Like, I know you didn't get 8 hours of sleep. Like, so I'll like address it like that. Like, hey, I know you said you're perfect, but I know you're at EDC. So like, can we elaborate a little bit on that? And then they're like, oh yeah, I should probably mention that. And I'm like, yeah, there we go. So you get them comfortable talking about it. And then once you form a genuine connection with them, and especially if like from the get-go, I just tell them like, hey, I'm blunt. I'm going to be straightforward. I'm here to make you better. I'm not here to be your best friend. They get more comfortable telling you stuff because over time they start to see that they get more results from it. And when you get that system going where they understand that the more they tell you and the better you guys learn to communicate about it, the more results they get, it just turns into this great positive feedback loop, So it's a good vicious cycle.
Right. No, and I think a lot of people don't even know like that they should tell you something, that it's related to, how my progress is going to not going to go. They may not think that, some what they consider random trivial thing, but when you kind of get that and put that in there and keep that consistently as a question, I think that's such a powerful tool, because then that also informs them. Well, if that's the case, then what else what else can I almost like within my own life can we discuss on how I can get better? I think sleep is maybe an obvious example, but like some people may not be super aware that that's very important. So you can be like, okay, well, how can I improve my sleep? Maybe I should start tracking my sleep better. Maybe I should, think about XYZ to, when I'm eating before I go to sleep, or, how much I'm drinking before I go to sleep, so I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night, or whatever it is. Like, I think when you get people thinking, if they're truly interested in this kind of journey that they're on, then they're going to be more thoughtful themselves on it.
Absolutely. Another thing I do too is just a lot of pre-explanations, pre-communication about stuff helps, because like you said, with the getting them thinking. So I'm probably going to start to separate it just because it's a lot of pages to scroll down now. But before they have their training, their nutrition, their supplementation, the PD protocols, all that and the stuff, there's a how to do check-ins above that, so that is always there no matter what. So, it still takes a few weeks for people to get perfect with it. They might mess up the starting picture and most recent check-in picture, not know how to use a layout app, stuff like that. But there's a section for sleep. There's a section for tracking and weighing your food. I have like 20 different recommended products that I'm not even affiliated with, that I'm like, hey, if you feel you may benefit from something like blue light glasses for a little bit before bed, studies are showing there's not really, one that's going to be too much better than the other. Like, this is something you can kind of go cheap on. So like, here, $10, and just toss an Amazon link up. And a lot of people, wouldn't think, I'm trying to think of an example of something people really wouldn't, meal timing. A lot of it, I'm just like, hey, try not to combine meals. And I'll get like questions on that. Like, oh, like, why don't you want to combine meals? Like, and I'm like, well, in the order of importance, it's not the most important thing, but since your goal's up here, I want to explain it to you. And I, explain, you get the food in, blood glucose goes up, insulin comes in, shuttles, the amino acids and carbs, everything to your muscles if you're optimizing things well. And explain how you don't want fatty acids floating around for a super long time, et cetera. Insulin sensitivity. And they're just like, oh. And I'm like, yeah. And then that gets them thinking. They'll Google stuff on their own. And then before you know it, they're asking me good questions every single check-in. They're learning more. So I can either take them further while I'm coaching them, or I can just get them a very, very solid base in like the, 6 months for a lifestyle client or whatever that I'm working with. And they'll just be so self-reliant by the time that that we're done officially working together, that it's great. You're right. It comes down to those questions and that communication. I try to emphasize so heavily with people.
Right. And then as far as the exercise side goes with people, I think that it's such an interesting part of it because it's such a huge part of social media is like, you'll see people, whether you're following bodybuilders or powerlifters or just, the average gym goer, you're going to see them doing all kinds of exercises and all kinds of variations, whether that be with great form for whatever, not great form. And whenever you're maybe a lifestyle client, maybe you're a beginner or, semi-beginner, you might not have that great of an understanding of like, why is this person doing that? Why can't I do that? That looks fun. How do you manage to fit what people want to do into a long-term plan to make it sustainable for them to where they're not like, oh, I want to do this now. I want to do that now. And I think a little bit comes with education, understanding that sticking with something is probably better for a little bit, but like, how do you keep them engaged in something that may be, I guess in general, just kind of a little bit of monotonous, cycle?
So a few different things there. One, I do a pretty thorough needs analysis before I start. So I have primary goal, secondary, third, secondary goal, tertiary goal. And I'll go really deep into that when I'm talking with them. Because, if I want them to join the team and we're trying to see if we're a good fit, I want to know what their goals are and I want to know how important each goal is, if they have a specific timeline for each of those. And I really appreciate, no matter what their answers are when they're honest. So if it's someone that wants to reach, a very high level muscularity, that will narrow things down a little bit more. We're not going to have you too much Olympic lifting. Like, we're not really going to have you doing anything that's not hypertrophic. But then you have people that want to do, hybrid programs. So they want to do, powerlifting and bodybuilding. And I love writing those programs because it's a very fun challenge managing all the different types of fatigue with that. But besides, just telling people like, hey, these are your goals, we can work them in. I've learned to just break the ego a little bit from the get-go. I'm just like, okay, so I like that you want to do this, but hear me out. Let me explain why this would be a lot more optimal for your goals. And then if it's still very important for you that you get strong specifically at this exercise, we can absolutely do that. You just have to understand that there's a very high chance that doing this other thing would serve your primary goals better. And usually at that point, they're just like, all right, well, I mean, if that's better for those goals, like I really just want to be jacked. Like I don't really care about, my bench one rep max. And then I'm just like, okay, let me know if that changes. But now that we're on the same page, we're going to do this other thing instead. And there's definitely like times where there's a little bit of friction with that. And I've kind of learned like, if someone really wants to change stuff up all the time, like I had a close friend that I worked with for that. And I got to the point where I was just like, if you want to change stuff up as often and you know that it's taken away from your goals, just don't pay for a coach. I was like, you already know how much this stuff to do on your own. Like, you shouldn't be paying me like just for like changing shit for the sake of it. You should be paying a coach more or less to like, get you pretty close to the best plan that you can realistically fit into your life. There's some stuff that we should do for fun because I think training is the fun part. I think eating should be automatic. The rest of your habits should be pretty automatic. There's a lot of stuff you have to not do for bodybuilding. Like drinking is a big one. A lot of people are just like, oh crap, I gotta like not do that a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I think you already knew that, but yeah, I'm not gonna shy away from that one. So just when you get to do the fun training thing, like I think you can work it in, but it depends on their goals. You got to be a lot harsher with it with people that really want to go to a high level of muscularity or on the other side, if they're a powerlifter, you got to train squat, bench, and deadlift. That's what you're competing in. So,
Right. You mentioned alcohol there. What do you think is the biggest maybe temptation as far as what keeps people off of from achieving their goal in the amount of time that they want to achieve it? And do you think it's more of the like alcohol or treats section? Do you think it's more of the I want to just go out to XYZ and not get enough sleep section? Like, where do you think people are maybe lacking on their discipline, I guess, if you will? This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
I think it depends. It's going to be different for each coach based on the culture that they've created. So I tend to just send people to like BetterHelp.com or a therapist or a different coach if I can't break them of their alcoholism very quickly. And it's usually people that make it sound like they're socially drinking once a week, heavily drinking once every 2 weeks. And then in reality, I'm just like, all right, you just went out, like I saw on your Instagram story, like we're friends. Like I'm going to see this. They just don't think it through. Like you went out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then day drink all day Sunday. There's no way you're going to reach a elite physique doing that. I mean, there's no way around it. You could be very lean. You could be like you have a lot of muscle, but not be very lean. But there's no way you're going to do both. I mean, even and if you take the one way that's maybe possible to do that, if you're already at a high level, like you just blast pedes while you're drinking, but your body is still going to fight you hard enough that that eventually doesn't work. I've seen people do it. I mean, I was a bouncer for a bit, and I can tell you some crazy stories of coworkers and people at the beach bar, but it eventually catches up to you. So I think that is a very it's one you can't get away from being a big issue. But I think the most popular one is people not adopting the monotony of bodybuilding, for specifically bodybuilding. Like you got to learn to love the process. You got to understand that the longer you do a movement, the more you can get out of it, and then you should switch it up occasionally. And there's a bunch of different reasons to eventually, but you can master a movement the longer you do it. Like I've been doing a lot of the same movements for over 12 years. I still learn something new, even if I can't express it. I still feel something new. I still learn something about it every time I'm doing it. So in a way, it's still new, but I have pride in progressing those movements as well. And with the food, I mean, like a normal person has so much food variety that maybe funneling them into optimizing their digestion by having a lot of the same foods consistently, especially once you figure out what works for them. I think that is probably the most common thing that holds people back if they don't have a bigger issue like the alcoholism. They're probably just not already at even a medium level if they have that issue. So
Right. Yeah. And so much of life in general, but of fitness and bodybuilding is just a physical manifestation of your mental, progress, really. I mean, that's crazy about a coach to me is like you you mentioned it a little bit earlier about trying to like get as much information from someone as you can, and like how can you learn more about them? How can we, just how can you almost as a coach know like everything, and then you're telling this person like, okay, based on everything that I know, these are the things that I would do in your situation to make progress. And then, you know, in a perfect robotic world, all those things would get done, but it's the psychology of like how you talk to people, what's this person's mental strength and mental fortitude like, and how's it like in this day even, or this week, might have been better, or might be better in a week, or might be better last week, or, you know, just to me, it's so crazy how like a coach can have such this profound impact on someone and an ability to impact them, but it's still, it just goes back to like, is that client willing to mentally just be like, okay, I'm going to do it.
right. Yeah. Yeah, you have to be very much on the same page. And what's nice too is the longer I've never had anyone go downhill with adherence. The longer I work with them, the higher it is and the more they enjoy the process, which is something I definitely pride myself on. And if they are, having a lot going on in life and that impacts their bodybuilding, like we just have an open discussion about, like because total stress load, like something called allosteric load, is a thing. That's going to impact your recovery. And to some degree, you can try to reduce stress in your life as much as possible. But if you're in grieving, I mean, if you're just going through some of these uncontrollables, you can't mess with in your life. Sometimes you have to pull down what you can control. Sometimes it means you got to train a little less. Sometimes it means you might have to not cut as aggressively, or move to like a growth phase when you were wanting to get in shredded for summer, but you just don't have the recovery capacity to do it. And I think it really all just comes to being straight up with people, but also letting them know that there's a reason behind what you're saying. It's not just, okay, when this normally happens, this is what I do. You know, I mean, we all have like patterns like that, and that is kind of how coaching works, but it's more so just learning exactly what someone's life is like, almost to a creepy degree, and then putting yourself in their shoes and saying, okay, this is what I think would be best for you based on knowing your situation, your psychology, everything we previously discussed. So this is what I'm thinking we do. Does that sound good? So I still, when it's like a lot at once, or if it's like a drastic change, like I still get confirmation, but I kind of like that more sometimes than just saying do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. If it's a lot of things, because I do want them to A, express that they understood it, B, confirm with me, basically like, shake my hand through the phone in a sense that they're like, yes, we're on the same page and I will actually do this. Like they're making a commitment back to me. And then if they don't do their part, like I'm going to call them out for it because that's what they deserve. They don't pay for a coach to hold their hand. They don't pay for a coach to hold themselves to the standards that they were previously holding themselves to before. They are paying for a coach to hold them to a higher standard. Because in order to make progress from where you were before, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard. Your habits have to be better. You're not just going to do the exact same thing you did before. If you're doing that and it was perfect, you wouldn't have hired a coach. So that's how I look at that.
Yeah, and really that standard is something that we can all look at. We can all be like, within my own life, what protocols, what could be better? Would it be better if I got an hour more of sleep, or would it be better if I got an hour less of sleep? I don't need that extra hour. I can be doing something more productive with that time, or whatever it is. Would it be better for me to just turn the protocol that I'm existing doing now, where I go home and I first thing I do is I sit on the couch and watch Netflix for 2 hours. If I turn that into a different protocol, like I think it's so interesting when I look at my own life and I think if I were a robot and I could reprogram myself and to be the most optimized version of myself to have the best habits, what would that actually look like? And how can I implement that within my life to where it's something that I can do every single day? Because there are some things that just aren't realistic. They aren't sustainable. They aren't, you're never going to be the person, probably for most of us out there, who never wastes another moment.
Looking for a supplement company that's as serious about your fitness goals as you are? All Sport Pharmaceuticals is here to help. Their top-of-the-line supplements are designed to help you get the most out of every workout with ingredients that have been scientifically proven to enhance performance and recovery. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting out on your fitness journey, All Sport Pharmaceuticals has the perfect supplements to help you achieve your goals. Plus, with their commitment to quality and safety, you can trust that you're getting a product that's both effective and reliable. So what are you waiting for? Take your fitness game to the next level with All Sport Pharmaceuticals. Visit the website today to learn more.
And I like your shirt too, because your shirt kind of goes off of that idea. Like I've kind of had that thought before. I'm like, basically the exact same thought you said. Like if I was a robot, what exactly would I do that would actually be best for me? And I don't necessarily, like jump straight to that because at the end of the day, I'm never going to know exactly what would be best for me anyway. And I think our body and our minds, more so our bodies maybe than our minds, kind of guide us towards what is best for us at that moment, or for that time period, that season of your life, if you will. But I try to still push myself towards what I've defined to being best for me based on whatever the inventory that I've gone through and what's most important for me. So I try to get 1% better each day, like your shirt says, and just over time my habits have gotten better, and I've just enjoyed that, and I'm proud of that, because I was doing every mistake you can think of with bodybuilding, powerlifting, life, probably. Like I've done to some degree. So like it's not about being perfect from the get go. It's about creating your best self, like as my team says, or getting 1% better. Like it's a climb. You know what I mean? So it's a fun process, and you got to love the process.
It's funny because I was reading an article on the stocks app today, and it said Dow closes 1% higher, something to that degree. And I was like, 1%, that's nothing. Then I thought, if they could do that every single day of the year, that would be pretty crazy.
Yeah. And I think there is kind of a hack in a sense with that too, that I thought of while you're talking. Like if say if you're like the biggest guy in the room, get out of the room, like find a bigger room. I mean, I think that's that's maybe the one thing that we can do that's like semi-controllable. You know, it takes like a long time to move or change gyms, whatever you need to do to get smarter, like have better business mentors, etc. But if you can position yourself to be around people that are holding themselves to the standard that you know you need to hold yourself to become more like them, I mean, your progress is going to massively, massively increase. And I would like to say very much so that being at MI40 has done that for me. So I'm very thankful to every person I have met there, and some of the people that I haven't met that I've just watched, you know, being jacked in the gym, like Derek Lunsford and shit, you know. It hypes everyone up. I'm not afraid to admit that.
And I think that in today's day and age, we're so lucky because we don't necessarily even have to, like, in the best case scenario, yes, you're physically around those people, but if you can't, you know, maybe you're in high school still or whatever, who you surround yourself with is in a big way who your social media is nowadays. So follow those people who are good people to follow. You know, like, who do you want to be like? Follow that person.
You presented a really good point. And also you brought up something about social media monetization earlier too, that I kind of wanted to connect to it. I have like 3 separate thoughts. I hope I can get them all out before I forget any of them. But, dude, I wish that fitness social media had been where it is now when I was in high school, because I was surrounded with swimming and stuff. And I had my best friend that was like, we'd be together in the car all the time. So I didn't have a car in high school, and he was amazing and drove me around everywhere. And like, you know, we'd have sort of deep conversations and stuff, but like, I really just kept to myself. I was just in my head a lot of the time. Swimming's a sport where you're also just staring at a black line at the bottom of the pool for hours and doing that. Like track, when I did like cross country, like you can still kind of talk to people. You can at least like see them. Swimming, no, it's really psychotic. But that kind of leads into my next thought, which is like, there's so much free mentorship out there. You can, if through social media, you can essentially surround yourself with everyone that you at least think you would want to be around, right? Because, you know, we don't really know these people to some degree. It's different behind closed doors, talking in person a lot of the time. Some people are very genuine. I strive to be, but everyone, whether it's on purpose or accident, a little bit different on social media than they are in person. Because for some of us, it's a job, a little bit or a lot. But you can choose who you get that energy from. You can choose who you get your information from. Like, for example, use an example of how crazy communication or free information has taken off. The world of PEDs, like when I was first growing up and well before I did anything, it was just these crappy forums where it's just all these dudes saying this and that. And it was just like such blatant bro science. And now we have J3U, we have the Grow or Die podcast, we have the Think Big I mean, there's like 5 more. We have Scott Stevens. Like, there's so much. Trained by JP. Like, I could just throw so many out there that are amazing. And I'm like, I can gain more useful information in a day through social media and podcasts now than I feel like I could have got in a week back in high school. And I really don't think that's an exaggeration, because it's just, you can find exactly what you're looking for. You can find an expert talking about it. I mean, like you're talking about the Huberman podcast. I recently just got into that too. And I was like, why isn't everyone listening to this? This is a gift. And he knows it's a gift. Like he's happy to do it, but like, this is a gift to Earth. Like this is crazy that we have someone who's this experienced in these important topics, displaying it all in an organized, succinct way, like weekly. That to me is crazy. And then I think that to link it back to the very first thing you said about social media, it is interesting how quickly you can monetize it now. Like I don't get like I have 2 different affiliate codes, like one for Own Revive, one for Amino Asylum. They're both great, but you know, like the only monetization I get really is just like marketing for coaching on social media. So I'm kind of like, you know, not like full on influencer, but like I kind of have to influence to some degree. And it's cool. Like I used to hate on, you know, the kids who aren't impressive yet, who are still making a bunch of money off of social media. But I've kind of moved my line back with that. I'm like, dude, if I was 16 and I could make money off of just throwing up some flexing vids and benching 225 for the first time, why the hell would I have not done that at 16, dude? I would have gotten into hardcore bodybuilding so much earlier. Like, you know, I'm glad that life took the path it did, but me and my girlfriend say all the time, we're like, man, if we were born 10 years later, like we'd be maybe rich off of social media by now or something, you know? And I think there just has to be like a line drawn between people realizing like, if so many people are doing it and you're not really stand out, like that's fine. But just like present your stuff in a way maybe where if you're not an expert, just focus on the inspiration or funny part of it. Don't confuse, like clout chasing with real education. So I try to keep my posts with that a little bit separate, and I try to provide at least something useful in every post, whether it's just like go to the fucking gym, no excuses, like something like that. Or like, look at my transformation. Like you can do this too, trying to get clients, but like generally help people through getting clients. Or if it's just like, yo, here's a long caption or like a video of me talking for 3 minutes about, what TRT is and isn't, different forms and all that stuff, and mini series. Like I try to just keep it useful. That's my thing. I'm like, if you're gonna make money off of it, like you should be providing something useful. I guess that's like kind of where I draw the line with that. But I think the next generation, while addiction to social media is giving me an issue, like I do think they were kind of blessed with social media for fitness in the same way that my generation was with the internet for information. Like I think, and then I think AI, I mean, that's a whole thing. I think the next generation is going to have AI for that. So it's an interesting world. It's going to be interesting to watch, see what the next evolution is in a sense.
Find something that actually you're genuinely good at and interested in.
I agree. And like, I almost want to say there's two types of coaches in a sense, because there's like the entrepreneurs and then there's like the hardcore bodybuilding coaches. And sometimes they argue with each other a little bit just because I think they both have great uses. It's just, I think the way they present it can be quite different. My thing is I don't post a bunch of the more like entrepreneurial minded stuff too much where like everything is supposed to be salesy or this or that. Like I try to just when I've learned to just be myself, whether it's social media or in person, and just keep it super consistent with that. Even through social media, people are smart. Like they're going to see that. They're going to see that. And also, like I just want to give credit. Like Justin Mihaly is the one that he talked about that a lot on the podcast. He's like, people will see through you. Like if you're not being genuine, even on social media, like people will see it. So I was just like, after a while, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna stop trying to like perfectly frame every little thing I say. Like for everything that I say that pisses, 10 people off, I'll get like maybe another 10 people that kind of like it, or at least it makes them think and they respect me for that, or they just respect me for being real and they like that vibe. And like maybe one of them, will become an awesome member of the team and maybe even a friend on top of that. And just from being my genuine self, you also tend to attract clients that you can be your genuine self with, you develop that coach-client relationship with quicker. And honestly, as a coach, makes your life so much more enjoyable. If I was constantly butting heads with people and having to worry about being canceled all the time and stuff, like I couldn't do it. There's no chance. I tried it for a bit and I was like, no, if this goes down in fire, it goes down in fire. But I'm gonna say what the hell I want 99% of the time, and if it's really bad, I'll just throw it on my close friends. So.
Right. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, if you're looking to do this for any type of income, sustainability is the most important thing, because it's so easy to do something one way because you think it's maybe the right way to do it at the time. That's the trends. But then if you don't love it, if you're not passionate about it, then it's so easy to get burnt out. It's so easy to just, and then you're not authentic. And when you're burnt out, even if you're trying to be, you could at least act like you're authentic at the beginning, but when you get burnt out on something, it's like you can't put any spirit and fake spirit into it at that point. So just do something that you're good at, that you're passionate about. And I think that at some level, it's going to work out, even if it doesn't work out that you're going to be doing in 2 years what you're doing now. That's going to lead to an opportunity or meeting someone that they have this new opportunity for you, or whatever it is. It's going to work out if you do something that you love and that you're good at least a little bit good at, and you can get better at. It's going to lead to some good things down the road.
And if you're authentic too, I think it naturally kind of makes you stay in your lane, which can be helpful. Like you were saying, like, you don't want to speak on too much stuff or you don't feel like you're an expert. So I think what's really cool with you is like you give experts a platform. Like that in and of itself is a very virtuous thing. you can monetize that. Like that's a great thing in and of itself. Like and there's like, I mean, you know, Rogan kind of does that too. I mean, he is his own platform too, but like his show is just bringing experts or funny people, I guess, on and just giving them even more freedom and space to say whatever they want, talk about whatever they want. And then he comes up with, you know, from his awesome mind stuff to make them think even deeper about stuff that maybe they hadn't considered. And I think it's just, I think it's beautiful when minds come together and can do that. It just makes the product that's delivered for the people even better. If you take someone who is an expert and you find a way to actually broadcast that in a way that reaches people instead of maybe just being, you know, a bunch of scientific jargon and such. You know, I could spit out a bunch of words from my exercise science degree. It's only going to help a very, very small percentage of people, and those people probably have the same credentials as mine or more, so they're not going to listen to that. So it's good to learn how to like actually use layman's terms and things like that. And I think people that can't do that aren't really an expert anyway.
Right. It's interesting. There's almost like two different sides. It's like some people don't know how to like communicate at all in terms of like they don't actually know the educational side of it. So they're just like spouting out what everybody else is saying. And then there's the maybe like there's probably a middle group there too, but then the other side is like there's the super educated people who can talk a good talk, but they can't get people to actually understand what they're saying. So neither party is really very useful at the end of the day.
And honestly, like that's to hold myself accountable. That's something that I definitely had as a weakness when I first went full time as a coach. I think it's still maybe a little bit of a weakness now at times. I think I could be quicker with how rapidly I can get my points across in general, but also to newer clients. Like I think there's some way that I could probably learn to just have us be on the exact same page with basic concepts. And that is part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to just put out so much free information that if I need to explain something, I can just be like, I'll just send a post to them. I'll say, hey, go to my highlights for training tips, third video in, there's an additional exercise demo for chest supported T-bar rows or something like that. And it's been doing a good job, but it's an art. It's definitely an art. It's definitely something you have to gain through experience. Like coaching isn't just something you can read in a book and do perfectly. It's something you very much have to actually do in order to be able to, you know, walk the walk.
Appreciate you coming on the podcast, man. It was great getting to chat with you.
Dude, it was an absolute pleasure. Happy that I was able to help with that. And anytime you want to reach out for, you know, further podcasting, fitness questions, like anything, dude, I got you. I love doing this. It's my favorite stuff to talk about, obviously.
Absolutely. It's really cool to get to connect with somebody who does have a similar interest in a world where there's so many people out there who don't get it, you know, who don't understand what we enjoy and what we love. So really appreciate it. And if you want to share where people can find you, you can go ahead and do that.
So my major one is Instagram. So it's my first name, Fit96. So it's JENSEN, Fit96. Not the most original name, I know. The team name is Team Create Yourself, which you probably gathered why I chose that over the course of me talking about self-development during this. Podcast I'm starting up soon, but we don't have a name for it yet. So just go to the Insta.